My name is Emily, and until recently, I thought I had a firm grasp on what my life was comfortable if not thrilling at 36, married for 11 years. To a man named Derek, I had resigned myself to the rhythms of routine he was. Dependable, successful, the kind of man who never forgot to pay a bill, but somehow managed to forget birthdays, unless reminded twice. We'd grown apart. Over the years, not out of malice or conflict, just slowly. Like ice melting in. A glass left unattended a few weeks ago. My nephew, Jason, moved to our city to begin his first semester at the university at 22, full of bright-eyed optimism and sarcasm. He was a welcome breeze through the stale corridors of my life. He was Rachel's boy, my sister's only child. And though I hadn't spent much time with him since he was young, he slipped into our home life, effortlessly bringing noise to a house that had grown too quiet one Friday afternoon. Jason arrived in a rush. Aunt Emily, do you guys have an old tablet or something? I could borrow, my laptop died, and I've got a project due tonight. Total panic mode without thinking. Twice. I nodded. Eric has one in the office drawer. He hasn't touched it in years. Let's see if it still works. I walked into Derek's home office, the room he kept meticulously clean, but oddly sterile. The tablet was right where I thought it would be, under a stack of old conference swag and business cards. It lit up easily, still charged. I powered it on and tapped through the menus, trying to get the Wi-Fi working. I didn't even mean to snoop. That's not who I am, but... Then something popped up. A notification, new message from Tina, miss you, already? My thumb hovered over the alert, stared at the screen as if frozen in time. It could have been spam, a wrong address, a misunderstanding. It wasn't. Curiosity, or maybe dread, took over. I opened the email, my heart thudded so hard I thought Jason might hear it from the living room. The message was short, but unmistakable, intimate language, references to last weekend and a hotel reservation confirmation. My husband's name was on it. Not a past email. Not years ago, last weekend when he claimed he had a work conference in Chicago. Another message followed it. Keep thinking about your hands. The way you touched me when we were alone. I felt the bile rise in my throat. I quickly closed everything, locked the screen, and handed the device to Jason with a tight smile. Here you go. Might be a little slow, but it should work. He grinned. Oblivious. You're the best. Aunt Em. Seriously. I nodded, retreating to the kitchen, clutched the countertop with both hands. Trying to breathe the tiles beneath my feet. Felt like ice. The world didn't tilt or fall apart in some cinematic fashion. It simply stood still. I had no proof beyond those few emails, but it was enough to fracture something inside me. That evening, I moved through the motions of dinner like an automaton. Derek came home late as usual, offering a kiss on the cheek and a murmured excuse about traffic. I studied him, his easy calm, the practiced affection, the way he avoided eye contact just long enough tossed your suspicion. He poured himself a glass of wine. Everything okay? Yeah, I said too quickly. Jason borrowed your tablet. Hope that's all right. I shrugged. Sure, I forgot we even had that thing. I watched him, daring him to flinch, to betray any sign that he knew his secret had begun to leak, but his face remained a mask, calm, unreadable. That night as we lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, long after he drifted into his usual careless sleep. My mind raced in 1,000 directions, scenarios, confrontations, denials. I knew I couldn't accuse him yet, not without more. Not if I wanted answers, instead of lies. My hands trembled as I pulled the blanket over myself, trying to find warmth in a bed that suddenly felt foreign. I didn't sleep much. Instead, I kept hearing that notification over and over. Miss you already. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how easily I might have missed it if Jason hadn't asked for help. And now the question burned at the edges of my mind, like a match waiting to drop. How much more wash hiding? I wasn't ready for the answer, but I couldn't unsee what I'd found. And somewhere deep down, I knew my life was no longer what I believed it to be. The days that followed were heavy with silence, Though nothing seemed different on the surface, Derek still made his morning coffee with robotic precision. Still left his shoes by the door. Still offered polite kisses goodbye. But now I watched him with different eyes. Every delayed reply, every late return from work, every glance at his phone lit a fuse inside me. I tried not to spiral, but I couldn't let it go. Those emails weren't vague flirtations. They were personal, specific. His betrayal was deliberate, not a moment of weakness, and the casual way he walked through our home like nothing had changed enraged me more than I expected. So I dug one evening while Derek showered. I slipped into his office again. The tablet sat unused, exactly where I'd returned it. My fingers trembled as I unlocked it, still no password. I knew I shouldn't be doing this, but the line between right and wrong had already blurred in the email. The inbox overflowed with messages from Tina. The earliest one was over a year old that night in San Diego. I knew it would be hard to let go. There were photos, too, nothing scandalous, smiling selfies, hotel lobbies, wine glasses raised in private toasts, but the intimacy in those pictures felt more damning than anything explicit. I opened a calendar app and saw trips marked consulting private. They lined up with weekends I'd spent alone, assuming he was working late or traveling for legitimate business. All this time I'd believed him. How many lies had I swallowed in the name of trust? I closed the tablet. As the water stopped, running, my pulse pounded in my ears. I felt sick, not only from what I'd uncovered, but from how effortlessly he'd deceived me. My husband had lived two lives, and I had been nothing more than a fixture in one of them the next day. I couldn't stop myself from checking his laptop. It was reckless. But I had to know how deep this went. When I opened the browser, it was already logged into his mail. A message sat on read. I can't wait. Until next month, counting down the days. Like a teenager, attached was a photo of a planet. Ticket New York, departing 3 weeks from now for a conference. No doubt that night I said nothing. I watched him laugh at something on TV and realized I didn't recognize the man beside me. Or maybe I never really had what kind of person could lie so smoothly, build a second relationship in the shadows, and come home to me without a flicker of remorse. He thought of the vows we made, of the home we'd built together brick by brick. And then I thought of Tina, whoever she was, and how easily she'd fit into his life. Without my knowledge, it was a triangle I hadn't known I was part of, and I wasn't even the point despite the pain I didn't confront him right away. I needed time control. I wanted to see how long he would go, pretending I wanted him to look me in the eye and lie again, so I could remember what it sounded like. I began documenting things, quietly. Emails, photos, messages. I stored them in a hidden folder on my own laptop. It was a strange form of therapy, lining up dates and destinations, matching receipts with his excuses. Every confirmation gave me clarity, a bitter sense of power. I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't insecure. I was being betrayed. One afternoon, Jason swung by to return the tablet. Thanks again, he said, his smile warm. Saved my grade. Seriously. No problem, I said, swallowing the knot in my throat. Glad it helped. He paused. By the way, is Uncle Derek going on another trip soon? I froze. Why do you ask? I thought I saw him at the airport. Last Saturday. When I was picking up a friend, he was, with a woman. I waved, but I guess he didn't see me. The blood drained from my face. Last Saturday. Derek had said he was working late at the downtown office. I forced a smile. I'm sure it was someone who just looked like him. Jason shrugged, unconcerned. Yeah, probably after he left. I stood alone in the kitchen, breath shallow, hands numb. There it was, confirmation from the most innocent source. My nephew had no idea what he'd just done. His request had opened. The door his casual comment had blown it wide open. Derek didn't know I was watching that. I was waiting. And when the time was right, he'd know exactly what it felt like to be blindsided by the truth. Jason's words played on repeat in my mind for days. There was no mistaking it anymore. Eric hadn't just made a mistake. He had built a life around a lie. The woman at the airport wasn't a fantasy. She was real, tangible part of his world. And I was just the backdrop, the domestic convenience he returned to, when the thrill faded that Saturday, while Eric was out, grocery shopping, a chore he'd suddenly volunteered for. After years of ignoring it, I prepared. I'd spent days collecting everything. I printed emails, screenshots, hotel reservations, and even the boarding pass to New York. I laid them out on the dining room table like pieces of a puzzle he didn't know I'd solved. When Derek returned, arms full of bags and face neutral as ever, I met him at the door. "Put them down," I said evenly. He blinked. "What's going on now?" He complied slowly, clearly sensing the shift in the air. His eyes darted around the room until they landed on the table. The color drained from his face. He looked from the papers to me, mouths slightly open, but no words came. "You've been seeing someone named Tina," I began, my voice calm, steady. "For over a year, you lied to me about your trips. You lied about your work. You've been living a double life, Derek." He stepped back, rubbing his temple. "Emily, listen. No, I couldn't. You listen. I gave you over a decade of my life. I've stood by you through everything, and you looked me in the eye night after night and pretended nothing was wrong. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I've seen the emails, the photos, the receipts. Jason saw you at the airport last weekend with her." Derek sat down heavily, as if the weight of it all had finally caught up to him. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he said weakly. "Of course you didn't," I snapped. "You meant for it to never happen for me, to never find out, for you to keep living comfortably while lying to my face." He put his head in his hands. "I didn't want to hurt you. You just didn't want to deal with the consequences." Silence fell between us. A kind of silence that didn't invite peace, only clarity. "I need you to leave," I said after a moment. Tonight he looked up, genuinely stunned. "Emily, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing left to talk about." He stood staring at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Maybe this version of me, firm, unsparing, was someone he'd never cared enough to see. He left without another word, taking only a duffel bag and a shattered illusion of control. The door closed behind him, with a finality I hadn't expected to feel so satisfying. The days that followed were quiet, but not hollow. Jason came by the next week asking, casually, where Derek was. I hesitated, then told him the truth. Softened but honest, Derek and I are taking some space. I said things weren't what I thought they were. Jason's face fell. Did this have anything to do with me asking for the tablet? I touched his arm. No, you didn't do anything wrong. You just helped me see what was already there. He looked relieved, though still guilty, in that innocent way. Young people carry weight that isn't theirs. I really am sorry, Aunt Em, I'm not. I said gently. I needed to know. And you helped me open my eyes that night. I sat alone on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching Fesky fade from gold to gray. The ache was still there, but it had shifted, less like a wound, more like a scar in the making. It thought about the years I'd invested, the trust I'd handed over without question. I wasn't naive. I knew healing wouldn't come quickly, but I was proud of myself for choosing honesty over denial, for valuing my own peace above someone else's comfort. I didn't know what the next chapter looked like yet, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was writing it for myself. And in the stillness of that evening, I made a quiet promise not to rebuild what was broken, but to build something new, something real, something mine.